Yeah,
parents'
what
basement.
what safe space am I in?
So, Kitchell, thank you for joining me from your parents' basement.
It's true. Well, this is actually upstairs, but it is I've got my therapy chair here and medium decor.
Nice. I love it. Well, I'm so glad to have a conversation with you. We've been talking for 23 years since we were 18,
Yeah.
22. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. And it's wild that we end up in the short-term rental industry after being pledge brothers freshman year in college. Did you expect this?
No, I didn't. Zero of what we were doing in college seems related to where we are now. I think we are both studying history. And yet, I would say 5 years post college, I think we both knew that we wanted to build businesses. And I actually think we both knew at that point was it 5 years or 7 years? We were both around the short-term rental space saying, what's going on here? This is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I remember distinctly walking up Empire Pass in Park City, and we were snowshoeing, and you said that you spent like the last $200 in your checking account to get there, so you weren't quite sure how you were going to get home to San Francisco. And I was like, dude, what do you do for money? Like, what is your job? You're like, I have a startup. And I remember it was like we were 24 or something, so it would have been 2008, and you explained to me what a startup was. And your explanation, and let's see if this still rings true, is like,
Ooh.
well, you have an idea and you just kind of make it up as you go along and try to turn it into a business.
I would say whoever that is still so true, right? I mean, maybe a caveat, maybe an ad. Let's build on that. You have an idea, you try to get other people to believe in the idea. And then you try to continue unpacking this problem that if it's a good problem, it hasn't been solved, but people want it solved or need it solved. And there's no one to point the way other than who you choose to listen to, right? Like, how would you describe startup? How would you describe startup?
I think I think the best startups or the best ideas are not actually fully formed when you have them. It's almost like a gut feeling, like something's missing or I could do it better than the way I just experienced it. I mean, how many hosts start hosting because they had, a bad experience or even a good one and they're like, I could do that. Or it seems like that host I met was having fun decorating or building some marketing or doing, making partnerships with local small businesses. Like, I think the element of startups is actually incinerating the playbook if there is one that came before you. Otherwise, you're just creating a copycat repeat business or going where there is no blueprint. There, like nobody's done it before. Therefore, everything you do is making it up as you go along. Sure, there's best practices. Like there's all these books behind me of like ways that people advise you to do it with, business model canvases or lean startup methodology, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to be very curious about what is a better way to do X, Y, or Z, and then have a lot of stamina and stick-to-itiveness because like the world is built to put friction and the word no in front of you, or you get the yes and it actually then turns into a ghost or something where it's like very disappointing. So if you can get through all that and you actually have a decent idea, like you have a chance. Probably not a
Yeah.
great one statistically, but yeah, startup is like a very low probability passion project.
That is a very good definition. A low probability passion project. But if it works, you've got the passion to take it to kind of an absurd level. That So, you made the joke about me being in my family's basement. I actually am in my family's home right now. And this is kind of it's a great question because last night my parents, I'm home for 10 days with my new daughter here, and they were asking, why did you want to start companies? We never understood that. And I honestly look back, I'm like, I don't know. It just seemed to be the most fun thing to do.
You did it
And
for fun.
yeah. Oh, I still think it's the most, and I now describe it as I'll never do anything else because I love building businesses and teams it is the most fun. It's so challenging, but you get the most stories. You
Yeah.
get the most stories, and that's ultimately. I told them that I said, well, I thought it was the way to accumulate the most stories in life, and I still find that to be true. But it's got some moments.
Yeah. Can we go to a moment that you can say no to, like the
Yeah.
low points? I'd be happy to share mine, but you are on quite a journey. You're a CEO of Wheelhouse now, the world's greatest company in the history of the world, as my opinion, not yours. No, but it's a fantastic company. I know you have very, very passionate users, and I think a lot of that comes from your passion. But your passion has had multiple outlets or chapters in short-term rentals. I believe you started off as a host, as did I. So, um, can you, in a lightning round, tell us the different businesses you've started? And then I want to key in on like, moments that you find as like pivotal or seminal moments.
Host on Airbnb to pay for my first business, which was language guides for travelers. It was a publishing company. We had no money, so I had to rent out, honestly, a couch and a place behind a bookshelf for money. So that last $200 is probably true. So hosts as of I think 2008 or 9 or 10, whatever, very early on in San Francisco, probably the first 1,000 couches on Airbnb. Got to meet Brian Chesky through that. Got to meet a bunch of other startup folks in San Francisco through that. And eventually one of those folks brought me in to run a company called Beyond Stays, which was a property management company looking to offer professional Airbnbs in an urban environment. Got brought in as a young CEO there. And 3 months later, because we were updating pricing across a bunch of properties, took some of those Silicon Valley friends. And as a weekend hack project, we built a way to hack Airbnb's API and update prices and built the first pricing engine for Airbnb that we knew of. Probably truly the first ever. That was so successful after we kind of tweeted about it, put it on Product Hunt that we scaled that business. That business is now called Beyond Pricing. And when Beyond Pricing went out to raise the first big round of capital, first round of capital, some things were discovered. I ended up kind of getting into a big dispute with the current founders there, the other founders. I was CEO and kind of the two other folks, and we parted ways. I took the data science team and partnered up with a few folks from another startup, and we built both Lyric, an operating company. So we designed basically hotel-like properties similar to Sonder, and Wheelhouse, and we built those at the same time. We lost all of Lyric during COVID. So today, my life is simple. I run Wheelhouse. It's my total passion. I get to build for a customer base I love, who I respect because we've sat in their shoes, who you and I both think is just kind of the future of hospitality in so many ways, the greatest unlock in the history of hospitality. So that's the short and sweet-ish. What more? I'm happy to share. And I don't have skeletons, right? I'll unpack any of that you want.
Well, I mean, it's been let's see, I want to recount something that I remember from our early days because, in fact, this is the first time we've ever talked about this, probably since it happened, because why else would we? I mean, the camera's recording now, so it makes a little sense. But I remember driving, so I was a short-term rental host who listed only on Airbnb. That's how it should be said. That I was an Airbnb host that in Dallas, and I had just landed in Dallas, and I had this drive up and down 75, the expressway, and every time I was driving down to my properties, I was calling you and saying like, "Hey, I got an idea. Like, I'm right near the convention center. Do you think I should go hand out flyers at the convention center to like market and see if anybody wants a place to stay?" And I remember that specifically because you were like, Dave, like everything you're doing, nobody has ever done. Like everything anybody pretty much is doing, nobody has ever done. It was like 2013. Airbnb had 300,000 listings and like they were on their way to 3 million. It was like the knee of their curve. And Dallas itself had under 300 listings, and with, you know, eight or nine or something that I was managing, I was technically the largest manager in Dallas. But to think back to then and the lack of tools that were there, I was one of Guesty's first customers. I remember I was a beta customer for Wheelhouse, auto host with Ella and Roy and Anton, like just a lot of people that were figuring it out back then. And then, you know, my story, I think, is similar to yours. It was like one thing to the next. But I do think that one of the things that people don't talk about as much with startups is like those moments where you have to be a founder who, you know, puts the face on, shows up to work, you're confident, you got the answers, nothing's wrong, and then the there's a fire burning behind you, or you got the looming, sword of Damocles over your neck or something. Um, Tell me about the hardest moment you've ever had as a founder.
So many, I didn't know the sword of Damocles meant that, but yeah, so
It
many
might
sword of
not.
Damocles.
It might not.
I love it. So, so many. I usually, I usually talk about COVID, and I usually talk about running an opco during COVID that was all focused on urban supply, corporate travel, venture backed, least exposed, the absolute paramount of a tough place to be during a global pandemic, unsurvivable. That was a moment. But yeah, I think I've talked about that enough that maybe, I mean, the moment I'll talk about a different moment, which is when I decided to double down on entrepreneurship. And so to unpack that story a little bit more, I'd been brought in. I was a host, got to know San Francisco well. I was in and around the startup scene, all shorthand, and I got brought in by a guy named Eric Wu, who's kind of a legend in real estate tech space, at least to me. And he brought me in to be the CEO of a small company he had founded, Beyond Stays. And being handed the reins of that and putting the first 500K and 750K in from kind of going out and raising that from investors and seeing what that was like. And then pivoting that business to a product, a software company beyond pricing was this really cool moment personally where I was like, okay, it's entrepreneurship thing. I've kind of figured it out. I've had my failed idea or two, and now I've got it. And I've got this real investor money, and we've got this idea that's lit a fire. There's a kind of a instant adoption of this new tool. And the founders fight that I kind of hinted at earlier was really like, is beyond pricing, my little baby being taken away from me. And it's taken in a really uncomfortable way. Legal documents, and you're being thrown out of the business. And those investors who had put in money supported me, and we went to battle, and we couldn't get the company back, and it was all weird. But I'd lost the first thing where I finally said, I put in 8 years of entrepreneurship, and this is the one. This I got it. And when it got taken away, the question was, okay, is this my signal to just go get a normal job, or is it time to double down? And that when I say I took the data science team and whatever, partnered up with three other people who were also running a tech startup. Well, the truth is, we were going to hire that tech startup to join Beyond. And when I got thrown out, they came to me and they said, "Why are you leaving? You loved this, and we talked about this idea 2 days ago, and you were so fired up. Why are you supposedly quit?" I was like, "No, I didn't quit. I got fired." right? So my exit hadn't been correctly portrayed. And they kind of took their time. They took a week and they came to me again and said, if we were to restart with, as your founders, would you want to do this again? And I stayed up all night thinking about it, being like, "Ah, if I lose again, that's really bad. Could I handle that? Like kind of the shame, the embarrassment of that." But I was like, yeah, I have to. So that was the most sort of Damocles where I almost left the whole entrepreneurship, not just the industry, but decided that entrepreneurship is so often just about doubling down when you're about to give up. That that was probably the moment that I look back on and I say that was, even though there've been, it's been tough since then. Lost Lyric, obviously building Wheelhouse, not easy. It's fun, but it's not easy. There have been so many moments since then, but that is the double down I'll probably always look back on and say that was the toughest, but right, the most correct call.
Wow. Wow. I mean, your quote was entrepreneurship is about doubling down when you think maybe you should quit. Was that more or less paraphrased? That like literally emotional level realness there. What do you think draws you to entrepreneurship? Like, do you think you're incapable of having a regular job at this point? Are
Oh, I'm
you
unhireable. No, I
you're gonna change your LinkedIn profile to like available to work?
please, yeah. I mean, it's funny because you probably agree. Some mornings you wake up and you say, "Why can't I just go and work at a hamburger stand for someone and just take orders?" And like, there are days,
So I can't relate to that one.
there are days, right? So it's not all. Um, I think the when you're in those double down moments, I want to hear what you do in your double down moments after this. But I'll say, I think in the toughest moments, aka another one, Wheelhouse launched, and one day later we had a lawsuit with threat of a lawsuit from VRBO 10 years ago. Literally the day after we launched, announced Verbo lawsuit. And my co-founder and I looked at each other at the time and said, "Well, this is about the funniest thing ever." And we just laughed and we are like, "How hilarious." Like you couldn't, it would barely make it into a Silicon Valley, the show. And in fact, when we lawsuit avoided, turned out to be friends with them, ended up doing data science together with Verbo, Homeway Verbo. Um, when we ran into the cast of Silicon Valley, truly, out at a restaurant in San Francisco 9 months later, when we finally were celebrating our first fundraising round for that company, we said, "Oh my God, your show is just like us. This is amazing." And they said, "We don't want to hang out with you at all. Get away from us." But just those moments when you can look at the possibly tough times and kind of have at least one person to laugh with, I think is, and say, let's just do it. Who cares? What do we have to lose? Um, that is a great, that what do we have to lose is a you kind of hit rock bottom, and you've also just said the words that you're going to double down with. So yeah, what do you do when you hit that point?
I use a lot of quotations and aphorisms and just like almost cliches that I stick with. So I'll give you the rundown of the ones that are most powerful for me. And I have a little plant over there as one of our side note. We do a lot of wellness focused things at Rent Responsibly because we work with so much intensity in the human level. Like it's not data science when you're trying to get a bunch of people, to get together or agree on something or work, whatever, and usually volunteering and obvious advocacy, intensity, all that sort of stuff. So we internalize a lot of the world around us. So a lot of the oh shit stuff that we have to deal with bleep that, is just overwhelmed from kind of the intensity of human nature, um, people feeling pressure or fear or something like that. It's not a typical uh, a set of challenges when it gets really intense. That's what I would say first of all. So the things I go to in particular are as backstops. Number one is this phrase "no fail mission." It's like when people say burn the boats or, only plan B is plan A, like, all this sort of stuff. The idea that if you are going to go on a mission, the minute you let failure be an option, like it becomes an option. And so if you say this is a no fail mission, then everything looks like some sort of path through. And so, then another one is, the obstacle is the way, right? That's a Stoic phrase. Ryan Holiday, author, like, has a book called that. But it really is like whatever you don't want to be doing is kind of what you have to be doing. There's a lot of that, and I think actually that's almost my ethos with startups is like I just seem to choose to do things that everybody's saying should be done, but nobody says like I'll do it. And that even when we were in the pledge class together as freshmen, I was the pledge class president. Little did I know that was the job nobody wanted. I just was like, yeah, I'm so into this. I was like, I'll be president. And then it turns out you just have to, when everybody has one thing to do, you have 20 things to do because you have to do everything with everybody and you're responsible for everything, which actually was probably good training for being a startup founder now that I think about it. But the other one that there's two more. The one that's really powerful to me is my Abe Lincoln favorite, which is the best way to predict the future is to create it. So you're like, oh man, like how am I going to get here? It's like you just have to create the path there. Like there's no other way than to create it. It's the future, it's unknown. And if you are in a frontier space or a space without a lot of, 100-year history, like probably nobody's done it. So that's a really good one. And then the one that Alexa and I, my co-founder, come to and sit with a lot is the best thing you can do when you're in the right place, like when you're sure you're positioned right or you have, hit like the tailwinds are as such or the industry's kind of zigging and zagging, but the best thing you can do when you're in the right place, don't move.
Mm.
Just don't move. Like you don't always need to be finding a better way or doing a different thing. Sometimes it's just a matter of time. And so the more you can stay in the right place and not move, the better your chances are.
Is that also a a nod to focus and a
Oh
nod
yeah.
to like if you find yourself in the right place, like that is one of the big tensions I think is knowing when to move and to move fast or knowing that exact question of like, oh no, you found it, sit with it and go deeper, right? So it's safe now to put down really good foundation here because success will come. That's an incredibly, I like that you and Alexa sit with that because that's an incredibly thoughtful. Yeah, you've got to keep asking yourself that in a lot of ways. Are the signals to continue to and invest more here, or is the signal that we need to try something else?
Yeah, and it's judgment, right? Like it's gut. We also have a rule called the 70% rule, which is if you're 70% sure, you're 100% sure. Because it's only more dangerous to assume you need more signal to get better than 70% sure. And stagnation, oh, this is a good Dave Angotti. Standing is demanding. So just standing in one, this is for running. He and I went on a long run, but it was like standing is demanding and sitting is quitting. So the idea that you actually are harming yourself by not moving forward, because it could feel safe,
Yeah.
analysis paralysis. Like there's infinity of these that point to like, yeah. And I think you hone your gut over time, right? And you kind of callous your tolerance for the, vicissitudes, like the curveballs that come at you. And yes, I will try to do another 4-syllable SAT word in this call. But it really is true. Like you don't have control. You think you have 100% control. You really have about 20. That's somebody explained that to me, and I'm like, I'm gonna dominate that 20 then.
Yeah. There's so many interesting things there. I think one thing I'll just hit on the 70%, if you're 70% sure, you're 100% sure and get on to the next decision. That is such a mantra to me too. I'm wondering where we both picked that up. I don't know. I know the first person I heard it from. Um, but it's interesting because it's not really what you're taught in school, right? It's like, wait, you can move forward with uncertainty. It's like, no, you have to. You have to. And you have to be totally comfortable with that. And it's it's I remember hearing that and saying that's so right. That's so right. And that's why startups can move fast because they have permission. They give themselves permission to say, hey, we actually can't take time to measure everything. So we just have to go with um, enough data and enough instincts to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but that's a really liberating place to operate from too.
And probably terrifying for some people, and it's not for everybody. It really is, it could give you mental health issues if you're not careful, or you perhaps like lose control of your habits and things that keep you stable. And that's where I've fallen apart in the past too, is less to do with the world around me and more in between the ears, right? Like it was just
Well,
hard, and I didn't have a way out. And so you know, got worse before it got better. But
but now that you built multiple of your own teams, companies, obviously with great folks, but now that you've done it, wouldn't it be much scarier to sit in a big company that was moving slowly, that was ineffective at making quick decisions and just living with the consequences? That would be for me that to me sounds terrifying because you might miss some opportunities by moving fast, but you also might get them. And I feel like when you move slow, you just inherently are missing opportunities. So to me, I couldn't be at a big company that was, hey, let's spend another quarter studying this. It's like, no, 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 no. Go get it. Dive in and learn. Actually, one of our Duke professors, Tony Brown, Tony Brown, great entrepreneurship coach, the first person who taught me a drop about entrepreneurship, always said, ready, fire, aim. Like shoot the ball and then figure out how to adjust. Don't don't aim forever, right? And I heard that earlier. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of true. Anyway,
yeah. Well, let me ask you, what do you love about the short-term rental space?
you and I have gone back and forth on articulating this. I think you described it once as one of the greatest economic drivers of our time, which I thought was a really interesting framing on what happens when anyone can build a hospitality business. I think I've often described it as a zero barrier to entry business where anyone with a camera and a personality can have a business. I love the short-term rental space because it's the greatest unlock in the history of hospitality. I think that's kind of the Airbnb host narrative. I think the narrative that Wheelhouse has been lucky to grow into a lot is when you meet the property managers who are doing this at scale and are huge, they're supporting all their local softball teams and investing in their communities. And they're operating in every ski town, beach town, et cetera, in North America. And they're really good folks who've been there a long time and they're working their tails off. It's just a fun collectively from the individuals to the larger businesses. It's a very interesting group of people to build with and for. And, I'm not going to lie, I didn't at age 5, I wasn't talking about building revenue management software for a category. But the deeper I've got in, the more I'm like, oh, this is a really fun and from my perspective, honorable journey. And like, oh, we get to build tools for folks who really need them. And it's really, really hard. And we're going to do our best. I just think, I think the collective of it's a really good group of people to build for, probably in the future, what will come to be the future of hospitality. And you get to shake hands with them at a conference and build with them is just an incredibly cool, makes it an incredibly interesting sector for me. Um, many, many elements. How about what's your take?
I think about this often because I think you were a history major too, right? Yeah, because it was like the easy one. Me too. No, but I actually really do like history. And if you look back at history at disruptive industries, like one technology that completely replaces another. I mean, I talk about the Ford Model T and the impact on roads and communities and public policy and safety and techno. I mean, it's on and on and on. And the first complaints were noise, trash, and parking for the car, the automobile. It was rolled off the assembly line, the Model T in 1908, Airbnb founded 2008. So there is like so much to just observe and learn. And they say, if history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. So you're looking for these rhyming elements of where have we seen this before? Where have we seen this before? And in short-term rentals, you've never seen before the combination of that low, extremely low barrier to entry, like zero capital requirement, and an iPhone will do. And to get started, granted, like a professional operation requires a whole complex set of things and a lot of people, usually. But the reality is there's a ladder there that the ladder is so low at the bottom that it really does invite folks from all stripes into the industry. You don't need, like, I don't think anybody's ever asked me what school I went to or what my GPA was, or, it's all that pretense that's in many, many other industries is just completely devoid of that here because it is about people. And it's the highest concentration, this industry, short-term rentals, the highest concentration of people who are innovative, meaning they're willing to figure it out themselves. They're entrepreneurial. They want to work for themselves and create financial freedom and run a small business. And then lastly, hospitality. Hospitality to me means you care about other people and want them to have a good experience or a good time, or in some cases, you know, save the day for them, something very, like be there when they really need it. That's increasingly what we see with natural disasters and other, displacing activities. And so the reason I love it so much is like that's the history of it, and it's still in this kind of magma formation of what form it's going to be in. But then you look forward, and when you talk about job loss from automation, you talk about job disruption, job displacement, what is the job of the future? Well, guess what? You can't automate hospitality. You can't automate a handshake. You can't automate being there for somebody at 2 a.m. when they, maybe don't expect it, but would just like hope and pray that you'll answer your phone. I did. I answered every single phone call and won an award for being a super host for 18 quarters in a row, which only 81 people in the world did. And that is a humble brag, yes. But it also is like, it was finding myself that, yes, I am innovative, I'm entrepreneurial, and I'm hospitable. And I wasn't going to fail on the job. It was a no-fail mission. So it allowed me to pull something out of myself that I didn't know was there. And there's a million people in this country alone who are going through that same experience. A million out of 330 million. And if you think maybe 4 or 5 people per home, you're talking 1% of the country is involved with delivering amazing short-term rental experiences. And like nobody thinks of it as that big, but it is.
Wow. I didn't realize that many folks were involved in that.
Yeah, there's 800,000 Airbnb hosts and approximately 20,000 management companies with an average 10 people each. That's the other 200. So that's not including vendors, that's not including housekeepers, that's not including revenue management people, it's not including whatever you would call us. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Community builders and education folks, the OTAs not in there. Like it's a it's a big deal.
And it's everywhere.
And it's everywhere in every single community. The fastest growing areas are the ones that you'd least expect, right? The rural, um, you know, I was able personally to save a 100-year-old home that was in a neighborhood that was somewhat run down in Dallas and able to breathe life back into a building that otherwise would have been torn down. And then later on, I found out that it was the last remaining one of these American four squares, which are just like 4 units, all shotgun, like straight through hallway and bedroom, bedroom, bedroom. And after I had sold it and now it has full-time residents in there, somebody said, like, thank you for doing that. And I was like, what did I do? And they're like, yeah, the previous guy was going to tear it down because it's old. I was like, oh my God. Like it's just there's so many stories like that.
That's awesome. Holy smokes. I mean, to shout you all out, I read responsibly. And maybe we should unpack your mission a little bit because you all have chosen to go after this you have a no fail mission to build a group that helps others. And there are many aspects of that mission. But you kind of got to know the industry well enough that you decided you want to spend all of your time on advocacy and helping different sides understand it and be the storyteller for a category that has good storytellers, but not like a collective story, not a good collective story. You all serve as a potential outlet for that. Like, first of all, I think you all are very clearly thus you are moving towards being the storyteller for the category, which is really cool. Shout out to you all. Maybe you're already there. But how do y'all think about like, you could have gone and built a tech company. You've done that before. You decided to go build an advocacy org. Why?
You know, it's funny you call us an advocacy org. I think that's one of the things that we do amongst others. I think
Yeah.
that we are a platform and I wouldn't think like, you know, Facebook is a platform. It's a tech company. That's its like primary thing is the platform. But we're a home for hosts, owners, and managers. So my thesis is that this industry was built primarily focused on the needs of the traveler, the demand, right? Two-sided marketplace, supply and demand. And then the host owners and managers, which you and I both were, and I always introduce myself as like I'm a host. I happen to do this noise thing called Noiseware in between, and now I'm leading Rent Responsibly, and we're getting all the hosts together and solving all the problems that hosts came into this industry and wish were solved before you even got there. So what we really do is we listen to host owners and managers exclusively and find out what their biggest needs are and try to help them solve them. The way we do that is help them formally organize, which they want to do anyways, they just don't know how or don't know how to set things up or have no business setting it up for the 40th time when we've done it 39 times already. And so we're bringing efficiency and scale to solving the perpetually evolving needs of hosts. And that's like, okay, what is that? Is that a business? Like, what are you even talking about there? It is a business. Oftentimes there's, if you, a good comp is actually these, what they call marketplace facilitator companies. So like, let's say you had a blender and you wanted to sell it on Amazon, but you wanted to focus on making the best blender in the world. You didn't want to worry about like drop shipping and marketing and advertising on Amazon and so forth. There are big companies that just find people with a product and a passion and they will facilitate everything between you doing your thing and the customer being happy. And so a lot of what we think about is, hosts just want to host. Hospitality providers just want to provide hospitality. They don't want to think about, what are the rules and the regulations and how to pay taxes and, what are the top five neighbor concerns. Like a lot of people find that out the hard way. We think that you shouldn't. So, we are a community building and education platform, AKA a home for hosts, building things that hosts and managers wish were there when they got started. And it's going really well, to be honest, because like I said, we've been standing in the same place for quite a while, and it's the right place for us to be. We have a very, very passionate group of people who feel the same way, and most of whom have hosted or have, a bent for hospitality one way or another. And, the thing that I love most, Kitchell, about this industry is, like you said, it's the people we serve are deserving. There's got to be something there like serve, deserve. I don't know how we could work that one out, but like the people who we serve deserve the work that we do. They really do. And I could list a lot of them. I'll just shout out John Hildebrand because he is a fine, fine person, a very inspirational person. I happenstance met him, and he and I have had this really fun bond because we've both just been continuing to do things that we don't feel comfortable doing, and we kind of always joke about how like we push each other into, further just to do more, go farther, that type of stuff. And it's all because we care. Like we care about the future of this industry, and it comes out of every pore of his body, and I'll it comes out of every pore of my body, and I think you don't find that passion in every corner of the world.
Well said, my friend.
But I love you, brother.
That was awesome. What a good articulation of your team's mission too, right?
Only taken 5 years to figure out, but yeah, sure.
Oh, it's so good.
I really do miss you, dude.